Green. Everybody finished with the quiz? Okay, so really fast, I'm gonna go through the answers with you all. So for number one about the mountain chains, the one that was not shown was Appalachians, which is B. Everything else was shown in the video. Number two, vampire bat, which is D. Number three, C, they hide from male bears. Number four, that's giant panda, B, that eats bamboo. Number five, C, snow leopard. And then last one for six, that was grizzly bear, that's letter D. Any questions about those ones? Yes, I have them right here. I can hand this back to you a little bit later.
What about our test?
The tests, I haven't actually finished grading them. What I can do though today, I just finished marking up everything. So I can show you the marked test and you can see which ones you got wrong. But I haven't had a chance yet to figure out your grade. That'll be tomorrow. But so if we have time today, I can pass out the marked test. You can see what you got wrong. But by tomorrow, I'll have an actual grade on your test. Anything else? Okay. So today we're going to go on chapter 28. So this is the human body chapters. So I'll finish out the year by talking about the human body and its functions. And then we'll be looking at pigs. I think next week, dissect pigs. Yeah, I think next week we'll do that. Yeah. Maybe this week, we'll see what we get to. Either this week or next week. So we use pigs for a couple of reasons. For one thing, you can get ones that are, a good size. They're about more than a foot long. And they're babies. They're actually not even born yet. These are, because pigs get really large. So we're actually, if they're about a foot long or so, these are actually unborn pigs. So they're called fetal pigs. We use pigs because the organs and the arrangement of organs is very much like a human body. So even though pigs are quite different from humans in many ways, the organs inside the body are very, very similar to humans. So we can use a pig to learn about the human body. So we'll be doing that pretty soon. But the first thing we're going to do is talk about how cells are specialized, how they develop and turn into organs in the body. So I'll actually go back to this first slide for a second. Yeah, sorry. Talk about this one first. Okay, so specialized cells develop from a single zygote. So remember we talked about this before. A zygote is the first cell of the new organism. So after the egg and the sperm fuse together, that creates a new cell. And that is the first cell of the new baby. So fertilization, that actually should be a Z. This is a British spelling. So over in the UK, they spell it with an S, but United States, we spell it with a Z. So that should be fertilization with a Z. But that's what happens when an egg is fertilized. Your sperm meets the egg and you now create a zygote, which is the first new cell. And the zygote specializes. Zygote then turns into different kinds of cells that make up the new body of the baby. And that's what an organism is. You have a lot of different kinds of cells that make up an organism. You have, for a human, you have things like red blood cells, you have nerve cells, you have muscle cells, you have fat cells, all different kinds of functions that help the body work. So a specialized cell has a certain job to do. It has a certain shape that's unique for it. And based on its shape, based on the chemicals that it has, it does a certain job in the body. And each one is different based on what it needs to do. So for red blood cells, they carry oxygen throughout the body. That's why they're red, because when oxygen binds to iron, it turns red. And that's what we get from rust. And so if you see red soil, you know there's iron in there. Same thing with the red blood cells. They're red because the iron in the red blood cells binds with oxygen to create red. So the redder the blood, the brighter the blood, the more oxygen there is in the blood. Oxygen, if it leaves the blood, can make the blood look really dark. So blood never becomes blue. It's an illusion. You look through your skin, you see the veins, they look like they're blue. They're really not blue. It's like the reason why the sky is blue. The sky is not really blue. What's happening is that the light waves are bending and it looks like the sky is blue. Also, eyes that look blue are not really blue either. We don't have a blue pigment that makes your eyes blue. the light inside your eyes refracts and it makes them look like they're blue. Same thing with your veins. You know, the light bends through your skin and the light that comes out is only blue and it looks like you have blue veins. But you really don't. If you were to look at your actual veins, you would see red blood. You wouldn't see blue blood.
Yeah. What about green eyes?
Green eyes, so that one does have some pigment. So green and brown have true pigments. So green would be a mixture of some light reflecting to give you the blue color, along with some pigment that makes it look green.
Well, you know, like arteries would have red because they're.
So arteries have brighter red blood, yes.
The veins, I mean, would be less.
Yeah, so veins would have darker blood. So if you have a bad cut and you see really bright blood coming out, you know you've hit an artery, which is a really serious problem. That's an emergency because you could bleed out in a matter of minutes or even seconds. And so that would be a sign that people look for. Paramedics look for a sign of really, really bright blood, bright red blood, because that would be a sign of an artery being hit. Now, what we usually though see when injuries is darker blood. And so we see more of a, even if it's like a purple or like a blackish color sometimes. We don't usually see that bright red blood that's from arteries, but we can. So blood always looks red, but it can be dark red. So veins would have a very dark red, almost even a black color in certain cases.
Is that because they've already gotten rid of the oxygen?
That's right. Exactly right. Yeah.
Are there specific signs of when you're bleeding internally?
Yeah, basically bruises. That's what a bruise is internal bleeding. So if you see, especially a big bruise, that would be a concerning sign. If you don't know why you're bruising, that'd be concerning. Well, that's what a bruise represents, is blood below the skin. So if you're bleeding below the skin, you're going to see that. In your head, you're going to have bad headaches. You're going to feel woozy. You might not be able to see properly or talk properly. You might even pass out. That'd be signs of bleeding in the brain. And that's very serious, and usually you can't survive too long with that. But other places in the body, you're just might have a lot of pain too. It just might be very painful. But the biggest sign would be bruising that you would probably see usually. But in any case, if you're bleeding a lot, you can't really survive too long. You're going to know pretty fast.
So if you do discover, if you just have a bruise
Mm-hmm.
and it isn't for any reason, are you gonna die from that?
Well, no, not usually. Especially if it's very, very small. I mean, very small bruises are pretty normal. If you have a very large bruise, like your whole arm is bruised, for example, that would be concerning. If you have a small, dime-sized bruise, it's not very big, and it goes away in a few days, you wouldn't have to worry about that. But if you see really, again, a large surface, that would be concerning. But a small amount, no. So,
Why is it turn green?
That's a good question. So the body will break down blood. And when it does that, there are different pigments that come out. So there are certain pigments that are green and certain ones that are yellow. And so you see both of those in bruises. So you see the wide range of colors as the blood breaks down because of different pigments you find in the blood and the waste products from that. And so it's normal to see green, blue, and yellow colors from the bruises as the blood breaks down. So as the blood heals, or as the body heals, the blood just is going to be broken down. And that's what you're seeing as the colors change. Can I let you push? I'll sorry, for nerve cells really fast. Let me go back to that before we go on. So nerve cells have a job too. And the shape of them shows the job that they have. They're for connections. So nerve cells connect between different parts of the brain. And they give information and signals throughout the body. So they're quite long. Some can be, 3 feet or so long. And these just give information, different parts of the body, up to the brain, through the spinal cord, and so on. So these are basically wires that transmit information throughout the body. Okay, so we talked about the zygote and what that represents. So over here, we have an egg and a sperm that meet to create the first cell of the new organism. Then at that point, the zygote multiplies. It divides into 2. Those 2 cells create 4 cells. And they keep on doing that and then they start to create a shape. So the zygote creates embryonic stem cells. So that's what we're seeing right here. The stem cells that can become any cell in the body. So these cells then, as they mature, they become liver cells or skin cells or brain cells. They specialize in different parts of the body. How do they know what to do? Well, the egg itself has chemicals that are arranged in areas in the egg that tell these cells what to become. And so you have a top and a bottom to the egg and a center. And that tells the cells, whether they should become brain cells or skin cells or muscle cells. And then as they start to arrange in a circle, then they're further given instructions on what to become. So based on the location inside the circle over here, they will then become different organs.
Is it possible for like those chemicals or like wrong chemicals or something so that the wrong cells are going in the wrong places?
Yeah, definitely. And that will lead to birth defects. I mean, now most of the time that's going to be deadly and the baby dies very, very early on in development. They don't last for too long. But yes, you certainly can have that happen where you have developmental defects and they're almost always fatal. We don't know for sure how many babies don't survive to birth because sometimes they're just so small that nobody knows that they existed. But probably about half of all pregnancies do not come to term. Now those babies have souls, and so they do go on to eternal life, and so they do have an eternal soul, but they're so young, they're only a few days old. The mother doesn't even know that they existed. And so I think a lot of parents, when they go into heaven, are going to have a lot more kids than they realize they had, because there are a lot of babies don't survive very long because of reasons like that. Their DNA is not working properly, or the chemicals in the cell are not arranged properly to create the organism. So it is quite common for there to be fatal defects that the baby doesn't survive for more than a few days or weeks. But we don't know the number because they're just so small, we just can't see them. We're not aware of all of them. So then at that point, the cells right here become specialized. The stem cells then go on to become muscle cells or nerve cells or skin cells. There's two stages that stem cells go through to mature and become specialized. So the first step is determination, and that would be committing to a certain cell type. So the stem cell is told what to become, whether it's a muscle cell or a blood cell or a bone cell. Determination will be the step where it's given instructions to become a certain cell. And that again goes back to the way the egg is and where the chemicals are in the egg. And those chemicals tell the stem cells what to become. And then after it knows what to become, then it starts to mature and become that cell. Differentiation is acquiring specialized structures and functions. So the cell then develops into, a nerve cell, and it grows dendrites and axons and this tail right here and nerve fibers, or it would become a muscle cell and it would grow into a spindle. But that would be differentiation as it matures into that cell type.
So when like the embryo is like just beginning, it's like in a circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the cells become specialized depending on like where they are in that circle.
Well, yeah, okay, so the very beginning, like the zygote, that's one cell, but then yes, then it starts to become, so then you have multiple cells that develop into like this soccer ball type thing. Is that the part you're talking about right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then based on its orientation inside here, whether it's on the outside or whether it's in the interior, like if it's in the middle section or in the very center, it will then be given further instructions to either become an organ or skin or muscles or bone.
So how does it, what gives it the instructions?
Well, it goes back to the egg. And so the egg at the beginning, the chemicals are arranged in a certain way. So the egg has an up and a down to it, and it has sides and it has a center. The chemicals are arranged in different locations that make the eggs makes the cells right here develop into different things. So as the egg splits into 2 and the 4 and so on, some of these get chemicals that make them become the top of the body. Some get chemicals that make them the bottom of the body. Others get chemicals that make them the center of the body. And they carry those further to create this structure right here. And then based on their location, there's certain chemicals that make the cells develop into organs if they're on the interior, or skin and muscle if they're on the exterior part.
So how do the cells know when to develop into the different organs?
So part of it's the DNA, and it's DNA along with chemicals. And so the chemicals and the DNA work together, and the chemicals again go back to the egg, and that's where they originate. And then as these cells divide, some take the chemicals that make them into nerve cells. Others take chemicals that make them into brain cells or to bone cells. So it's based on what they get from the egg that will then make them develop into other kinds of cells.
But how do the chemicals do that?
So the chemicals work with the DNA. DNA creates different proteins, and that makes different kinds of cells. And so if the DNA genes are turned on, it'll create certain kinds of structures. So for the nerve cell, for example, you have to have certain genes turned on that make the tail, that make the nerve fibers. So the chemicals will turn those genes on. And then if you have, say, a muscle cell, you had different genes activated that would make these kinds of proteins that make into a spindle. And so the chemicals would turn on certain genes that would create these different structures that you see over here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but like, how do the chemicals know when to do that?
Oh, well, it would do it pretty much right away. I mean, very early on in development, the chemicals start to work with the cell to start to grow and develop into the certain. So determination happens pretty much immediately right here in this step, where the cells are told through chemicals what they're going to become. And then they start to develop over weeks and months to become those certain cells. So the chemicals tell the cell what to do, but then it takes sometimes weeks or months for it to become what it needs to be.
I see. So it isn't like the chemicals, like the zygote splits and then the chemicals tell the cells what to become, and there's just a mass of like blood cells.
Yeah, it would take weeks to months for them to develop and mature. They have to have time to grow, to make the proteins, to become the certain cells.
I see. But like, how does a little circle become a huge ball?
Yeah, I mean, it takes time, but you can see the process, right? I mean, so you got one cell that then starts to split into a few, right? And then after you have multiple cells, they then create this ball shape. And that's due to the chemicals. Basically, you have positive and negative charges, it acts like a magnet where it can pull, positive attracts negative. And so you have a positive and negative ends that can attract certain things, which would then make it into a ball shape. And then based on the location, based on the chemicals they have, they can then turn on certain genes, which would then make them have different kinds of structures. Yeah, Lucy?
Are those chemicals still in the cells like that are making them do that, or are those genes just turned off every single time they like?
Yeah, no, you need the chemicals. So the cells have those chemicals.
So they just keep making the chemicals, and then chemicals being divided. over again.
Yeah, they can make more of the chemical. Once they have it, they can make more of it. Yeah. Go back to earlier fast. And that's also why older women have more birth defects, because, so when a baby is born, a female baby is born, there's about 1 million egg cells that baby has. And as the baby develops and gets older, the egg cells have been there her whole life. And so if she's now 40 years old, the egg cells are more prone to, radiation, where they can start to have mutations. So the egg cells it's important that they're protected, because they're with you for life, and as they get older, they're more prone to having problems and having damage. So it's really important that they're intact, because a damaged egg cell is going to cause problems with the baby. Okay, so we're going to go on to 5 different ways to organize the human body. The first one is a cell. So this is the most basic form of organization. The smallest unit of living things is a cell. So looking at your body, the smallest thing you can take off your body that still is living would be a cell. You take up a skin cell, for example. Now the skin cell would die pretty fast without the right environment, but you could pull off a skin cell from your body, put it into a petri dish with water and food, it could grow and divide, and it could survive. This picture is showing you cells in your throat. And so it's showing you up here, you have these little small hairs that line your throat, that line your lungs, and they're called cilia. And they beat out things like pollen and dirt that's in the air, and it keeps your lungs clean. And so that keeps it in your throat, not into your lungs. And that's a single cell that looks like. You can see right here, this would be multiple cells that line your throat, and that line your lungs. And the little tiny hairs right here. And they're very closely packed together in your throat. So tissue would be multiple cells combined together. And these are common cells. They have a common function. So, if you think about, all the cells that are similar that line up your throat, that would be a tissue. So we'd say blood is a tissue. Blood is just a collection of cells that are similar. They're all blood cells. Skin is a tissue. You have many of the same cells that make up your skin. But then you can have different kinds of tissue combined to make organs. Organs are different tissues acting together for a common purpose. So a lung would be an organ. For lungs, you have skin tissue that makes up the outer part of your lungs. You have blood that moves through your lungs. And so you have multiple tissue types that work together in your lungs to create this organ.
There's skin or.
Well, yeah, you can call it's really epithelial tissue, but it's like skin. It's not as tough as skin because it's inside. And so, but it's like skin. It's more of a transparent, it's so thin, it's more of a transparent than like your outside of your skin. But it's very similar to skin. Organs have specialized functions, and so they have certain jobs to do. So every organ is different. So your lungs, for example, the purpose of your lungs would be to pull in oxygen and move it into your blood system, and then to take out carbon dioxide from your blood and expel it out into the air. You also have an organ system where you have several organs working together for a common purpose. And so you have the respiratory system, which would be your lungs, your windpipe called your trachea, along with your mouth. These all work together to breathe. And so there's multiple organs that have a common purpose, in this case, to breathe. And there's 11 major organ systems we're going to talk about today. You have things like urinary system, digestive system, reproductive system, cardiovascular system, which would be your blood, respiratory system, which would be taking in oxygen, immune system. And so you have major body systems that have multiple organs working together for a common purpose. And then the last one would be the whole organism, everything together in the body working together. So the last one, number 5, organism, all organ systems working together to make the body function. Yeah.
But can they skip all those middle parts and just be an organism without without tissues, organs, organ systems?
What do you mean by skip them all?
Well,
Like,
all it is a cell.
oh yeah, like that's right. So you can have like bacteria, for example, or algae, where it's basically just one organism on its own. It can survive on its own. So yes, there are certain single-celled organisms like amoeba, bacteria, algae, which can survive by itself. But for us, you separate one cell from the body, that cell dies. And so we are an organism made of many different organs that work together. You take out a lung from your body, that lung is not going to survive. You take out organs, those organs don't survive on their own. So you need the whole organism working together, we have all the organs. But yeah, there's certain things like fungus, algae, bacteria that can survive as one single cell, where they don't really have organs. They have organelles, they have mitochondria, things like that, but they wouldn't have brain, heart, things like that. Apoptosis, did I mention this before? Maybe in chapter 5 we talked about this, where you have programmed cell death. And so there are certain times that the body actually wants to destroy certain cells for different reasons. So one common time you'd have that would be as you're developing in the womb, you have certain tissue that basically just gets destroyed to form you. So one place that would be between the fingers. So a very small embryo has like a mitten for a hand. The skin between the fingers has to be cut for you to get fingers. And so apoptosis would be destroying the skin cells in between the fingers to create the fingers. Another common place would be the tail. Embryos have tails when they're very, very small, but then over time that is destroyed. Now, there are certain cases when people are born with small or even larger tails. That's really uncommon, and most of the time they just get it removed right away when they're a baby. But if it didn't get cut off in development, then sometimes you retain things like that. You can kind of see it right here, not too well, but you can kind of see, the remnants of a tail that forms in the baby. So it's very early on in development that it happens, just a few weeks in. Yes.
Why is there two?
It's just the way it's formed. Think of it like it's a ball. Think of it like how this tail wraps around the head. Like at one time, this is all rolled up into a ball. And then as you get older, though, you become less of a ball and more of a human shape. But the ball shape to begin with, well, the tail was wrapping around to the head. These are the major organ systems. We're not going to, don't write this down, but just really fast, just to go through them all. So you probably heard about some of these ones, some circulatory system, digestive, excretory, also called urinary system. Endocrine, maybe you heard about that one, maybe you haven't. That's one that's not as common. Immune system, you've all heard about that one, I'm sure. Integumentary system, that's just your skin. Muscular system, nervous, reproductive, respiratory, skeletal. So many of these that you're familiar with, some maybe you're not, but we're gonna go through them all. There's 11 different ones to know. So integumentary, that is your skin. It forms the external covering of the body. This also would line the organs. So it forms not only your skin, but also all the organ lining. If you've taken Latin, then you've heard of the word integris. So we know what that means? Or you heard of integrity? Yeah.
Like, true.
True. So for integrity, yeah, if you think of the word integrity, we think of honesty, right? Sometimes it can be like tough too, right? Now for Latin, integris means whole or intact. So how would that, go along with this? Well, basically the skin keeps your body together. So integumentary system keeps your body as one thing. It holds things in. It holds in water and fluids, organs. It protects your body. It's waterproof. We don't think of it that way sometimes, but your skin is waterproof. Now, your skin wrinkles in the water, but it's not because the water gets into your skin. It's actually a reflex. So when water hits your skin for a prolonged time, the nerves recognize that, and the nerves make your skin wrinkle up. But it's not because water is going into your skin. We're not quite sure why that happens, but we think it's for gripping. We think that, if you have little wrinkles on your fingers, you have better grip in the water, but we're not for sure. But it's not because water enters your skin, it's because there's a reflex that makes your skin wrinkle in water. And so it is waterproof unless you have, cuts. Water can't get into your skin.
How is it waterproof?
So basically, are you asking like what structures make it waterproof? So you have oil on your skin. Oil and water don't mix. And so you have this it's called hydrophobic layer on your skin. And so you have naturally this oil that's secreted, which repels water. And so you might see little beads of water on your skin because you have hydrophobic oil on your skin. You also have very tightly packed cells. So the cells have no gaps between them. So the skin cells are so closely packed, there's no gaps between the cells. You also have a layer of dead skin on top. And so what you feel on your skin is all dead cells. The cells have toughened up, and you have a protein called keratin, like your fingernails. It's the same kind of protein. It's on your skin. And keratin is a very tough, hard protein. And so the cells that you feel are dead, hardened cells. And so those are 3 reasons why it becomes waterproof. Because of the oil, because of the tough dead skin layer on the outside, because they're so closely together, there's no gaps between the cells. Yeah.
What would be a callus then?
The callus is just a bunch of dead skin cells. And so if you rub against part of the body over and over again, you are making more cells. And as you do that, you push up dead cells. And so if you play guitar, for example, you're going to have calluses on your fingers because you're rubbing against over and over and over again one part of the finger. You're going to make more and more cells, and that'll push up dead cells, which you feel as a callus.
So is the reason like my baby skin is so soft because they cells have died?
Yeah, that's right. Not many have died. Now some have, but not that much. And so that's exactly right. So, and as you get older, you know, the sunlight especially really harms your skin. And so sunlight is very damaging. And so you accumulate damages from the sun as you get older too. And also if your skin dries out, that's another reason why your skin gets tougher as you get older. Cushions and protects. And so your skin acts like a cushioning layer too. So you have fat, the bottom layer of your skin, which cushions your organs and your bones, protects, insulates, keeps heat inside. Your body also secretes dead things, bacteria, for example, that have died are on your skin. There's acid on your skin that helps kill some bacteria and viruses. And so that's how some bacteria and viruses die. It's just the acid on your skin that kills them. Also, you're going to find salt is from your sweat that's secreted. And so if you have too much salt, it secretes out through your skin. Urea is a byproduct. It's a waste product that's secreted through your skin as well. Not very much, but there's some. So if you have too much sodium, you actually can see it on your skin building up. And so if you have certain disorders that build up sodium or chloride, then you're going to see white patches on your skin from that as the salt starts to accumulate in your skin.
I thought urea was in your blood.
Yeah, some of it is in your blood too. Some's in your urine, but some can also be secreted through your sweat onto your skin. So not much, but there's a little bit of urea that can be secreted through your sweat onto your skin. The majority of it is going to be in your urine. It's not going to be anywhere else, but some can be in the blood. Some can be, most of it's in the urine, but some of it can be in your sweat too. But the majority of sweat is just water and salt. Skin regulates body temperature. So it is able to bring heat and keep heat next to your body. So this right here is all living tissue right here, the pink, and this top is the dead skin. So epidermis is made mostly, the very top layer is made of dead skin cells. Living cells are down in this area. They start about right here. Everything below that is all living tissue. As they get further and further up, they die. You can see right here, sweat glands look like this. And these are oil glands next to your hair. You have in your skin different kinds of nerves that tell you different information about the environment. Some nerves are for temperature. So some are just for cold, like you can see in this picture right here, that's a cold receptor. Some are just for heat. And so some are fired if you're too cold, some are fired if you're too hot. And you know, you're either going to shiver to warm up or you're going to start to sweat to cool down. Some nerves are only for pressure. And so some nerves are only fired if they exert pressure. Some are for deep pressure, some are for light pressure. So some, if you press down lightly, they're going to be fired and you're going to feel the light pressure. Some, if this is more for deep pressure right here, then you're going to know it's a more intense pressure you're feeling on your skin. Some are for touch. So they're going to be very close to the surface. But if you have an intense feeling, then it feels like pain no matter what. So you have intense pressure. If you have intense cold or heat, it all feels like pain to you. So if it's a very intense signal, it's going to be painful no matter what, because your body is telling you through pain to do something about it. So if it's a very high temperature or a very low temperature, it feels the same to you, really. Have you ever had, really, really cold ice on your fingers? And it feels painful to you. Same thing as if it's too hot. I mean, it's really the same kind of pain sensation at that point. And so because it's killing your cells in both cases, whether it's too hot or too cold, your cells are dying, and that's what you feel as pain. And then, in your mouth, you have taste receptors that tell you whether you're tasting, certain chemicals. So some chemicals, though, can interfere with the cold and the hot. Mint fires the cold receptor, and so you feel like it's cold in your mouth when it's really not. And so if you have minty gum and then you drink some ice water, it'll feel a lot colder to you. It's an illusion, though. It's not really colder, but your brain thinks it's colder because you have the cold receptor that's already been fired, and so your mouth already thinks it's cold when it's really not. And then for cinnamon or for pepper, same thing. The heat receptor is fired, and so it thinks it's hot when it's really not. So if you then drink hot coffee along with having the pepper, you're going to feel very, very hot because your body thinks it's already hot to begin with. You're going to feel even hotter. Do you have a question?
Oh yeah. So if you get a burn and then you put cold gel on it, it feels really, really cold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's to do more with just that it's been damaged. And so you're going to be more prone to any kind of temperature change if you've already had damage to your skin. That's more of why that is. You're just going to be more sensitive at that point to anything, whether it's touch, temperature, because your skin is damaged, the nerves are open to the air, and the nerves are very vulnerable to anything at all that's happening to it.
So, you have skin on your tongue?
You do, yeah. I mean, it's different kind of skin. It's not like this skin. It's a kind of skin, but it's not the same thing as the skin on the outside. So you don't have hair on your tongue, for example. You don't have that. I mean, you have hair on this part of your body, but it's a different kind of skin.
You have skin lining your cheeks?
It's different. It's not the same. Yeah, it's a different kind. So it's not, I mean, most biologists would not call it skin. They call it epithelial tissue. So epithelial tissue is a kind of skin, but it's not what we call skin.
So does it stop
on your lips? Yeah. So it's very similar to skin, but it's different because we don't have, so what we call skin is dry and it's hard and it's made of dead cells. The inside of your mouth has living cells and it's not dry. And so it's very similar to skin, but not the same exact thing as skin.
But what about when things flake off?
Yes, I mean, some of the cells do die, but you don't have this tough outer layer of skin that is dead like you have on your hand. Most of it is living tissue and not dead. And so that's the main difference, but it's very similar to skin, but there are some differences. And the main difference is that you don't have the tough outer layer of dead cells that you have on your skin, and you don't have hair. Those are two differences. Skeletal system. So for that, you'd have bones, ligaments, and cartilage that make up your skeleton. So bones, 206 bones for the adult, about 300 bones for the baby. And so when you're born, you have about 300 bones. But the bones fuse together as you get older. And that's why you have less bones when you're an adult than when you were a baby. And so babies are very flexible. They have, a soft spot on their skull, that's cartilage, and that forms the skull bones. But when they're a baby, they have separated bones in the skull. And it helps with delivery. The skull is actually squishable so that the baby is able, the baby doesn't get stuck very easily. Some babies, when they're born, they have like a cone head. Their head actually has been squished into this triangular cone shape, and they have to get that fixed, or it's going to set that way. So it's fairly common for that to happen because the baby skull is not hard when they're born. They have cartilage that's flexible. As you get older, though, you still have some cartilage. You have cartilage in your ears and in your nose and in your ribs. And so it just stays that way throughout your life. But other cartilage, as you get older, goes away and turns into bone. Ligaments. I don't know why I did that. Let me change that really fast. Yeah, sorry. Let's see. I can't see anything without this. Here, let me just do this really fast. There we go. Okay. And so ligaments connect bone to bone. So you have ligaments, for example, ACL is a ligament in your knee. That's, it's common sports injury. ACL connects your femur, your thigh bone, to your tibia, your shin bone. And so ligaments always connect bone to bone. Cartilage is in between the bones. It cushions your bones, it cushions your joints. So if you have arthritis, you have cartilage that has worn away. And cartilage makes your joints frictionless. You have no friction at all when you move your joints. But if the cartilage wears away through arthritis, it becomes very painful to make any kind of movement. And so that's the main purpose of cartilage. And also it makes flexibility possible in certain parts of the body. So cartilage, again, your nose has cartilage. No homework tonight because we didn't finish 28.1. So don't worry about that. Tomorrow we'll finish at 28.1. I'll pass out your tests tomorrow and your quizzes. Have a good day. You're welcome. Oh, yeah, if you want to just keep it here, I can show it to you really fast because I haven't marked it yet. There you go.
So how much would I